So tunga hugiti, welcome. Uvanga Jocelyn. My name is Jocelyn and I am the assistant curator of Inuit art here at WAG-Qaumajuq. Qaumajuq is the new Inuit Art Center situated in Territory 1, Treaty 1 territory, excuse me. As an Inuk, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm a guest here on Treaty 1 territory, and that they are the original lands and waters of the Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Today we have a wonderful panel for you that is being recorded to be posted later on to wag.ca/inua-online. And we are here with two of the artists in Inua, Inua being the inaugural exhibition of Qaumajuq, and it is curated by four Inuk curators, Dr. Heather Gugliorte, Asinayak, Krista Zawadzki, and Kablusiak. And today, we are joined with two of the artists, Lindsey Mcintyre and Megan Kyak-Monteith. And this discussion is moderated by Napatsi Folger. Napatsi Folger is an Inuk comic artist, fiction and nonfiction and children's literature writer, originally from Iqaluit, and now living in Vancouver. Napatsi is also the contributing editor for Inuit Art Quarterly, where her comics were featured as a limited series in 2021. So Napatsi, I will hand this over to you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Thank you for putting this together. I've been excited about it for a while now, and I'm very happy to be moderating and to, I'd like to also acknowledge that I'm located in North Vancouver right now on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. I'm excited to introduce both Lindsay and Megan, whose art I have always admired, and I'm very excited to hear them talk about the animation today. So first off, we have Lindsey Mcintyre. She is a filmmaker and multidisciplinary artist of Inuit and settler Scottish descent with an MFA in film production from Concordia University and a BFA in painting and drawing. She generally prefers to do things the hard way, and her multiple award-winning short documentaries, experimental films, and expanded cinema performances are often process-based. She also makes her own 16mm film with handmade silver gelatin emulsion. Working primarily with 16mm film and experimental handmade and documentary techniques, her short films circle themes of portraiture, place, form, and personal histories. She was honored with the Reveal Indigenous Arts Award, Natishan Foundation 2017, was named the Victor Martin Lynch Staunton Award recipient for Excellence in Media Arts, the Canada Council 2013. Her personal documentary, Her Silent Life, won Best Experimental Film at Imaginative in 2012. She has been a member of the Double Negative Collective, EMO Collective, Artist Run Film Labs, and an international consortium of emulsioneers. Recent projects include We Are All Different, an animated experimental documentary for the Winnipeg Art Gallery's Qaumajuq, a telescopic local documentary, Final Rollout, The Story of Film, and a monumental projection mapping installation on the Vancouver Art Gallery, If These Walls. She has made over 40 short films over the past 20 years, and her works have screened at festivals around the world, and can be found in several permanent collections. She teaches film and screen arts at Emily Carr University of Art and Design on unceded Coast Salish territories and anywhere else the people will listen. The next artist that we have to talk as well is Inuk artist Megan Kyak-Monteith. She was born in 1997 and grew up in Pond Inlet, Nunavut. She earned her BFA in Interdisciplinary Studies at NSCAD University in 2019 and currently resides in Halifax, Nova Scotia. In her practice, Kyak-Monteith often depicts her experiences growing up as an Inuk in Nunavut and Nova Scotia. Her works centered around memory are often exaggerated with scale and color, adding an atmosphere that is similar to what she thinks distant memories appear. Her illustrative works include books published by Inhabit Education and articles published in Inuit Art Quarterly, Inuktitut Magazine, and The Walrus. I'd like to begin this discussion inviting Megan to talk about her work and her process. Megan?
Okay, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Megan. Okay, where do I start? My works, Whale Hunt, I think everyone is here, the animation, and Large Feast on a Bed of Cardboard, the animation, are both based on paintings that I made, like still physical paintings. And yeah, the first one that I tried was a huge experiment. The first one was Large Feast on a Bed of Cardboard. And so I painted it at NSCAD, kind of like a still life, like a romantic feast type of thing. But it was just the food, and I wanted to show how, like, you know, whenever my family eats traditional food, like country food, like mukta, caribou, just tea, we're all sharing it, we're all talking, we're all like, I don't know, it's like a bonding thing for me and my family. So I wanted to depict what was missing from the still painting, was the hands, the act of cutting up the meat, the act of sharing it. So I had an opportunity in Montreal to in an artist residency to make something that I never made before, like using a process that I never made before, which is animation. And so I decided to recreate that painting using stop motion and time lapse at the same time. So I painted, I drew the background, which is the cardboard, on paper with oil pastels, and then I got a sheet of plexiglass and I put it on top, and that's where I would paint with the oil paint. So it's similar, like, way that I do paintings, because I'm not really familiar with animation, so I wanted to use like a material that I'm familiar with. So I would paint a little bit on the plexiglass with the camera on top and take a picture, and then paint a little bit more and take another picture so that it would move around. And hard to describe without the the painting here, or the animation here, but oh, thank you. So you could see, like, the background that's all brown is the drawing, and everything on top is a part of the painting. So I used two different animation techniques, which is like time lapse and stop motion, which is where you could see the hand reaching in. Is I painted each frame separately, but then these hands are painted in like a, like you could see the buildup of the work forming. And I did that in a week, which I don't think I would try to do again. That was too much. But yeah, that one was really fun, and it really grew the possibilities for how I want to make other animations, because it it drew more meaning to what I was trying to depict with the still paintings, which was just the feast on the cardboard, and not the act of, let's say, like someone cutting up the makta, the child's hand reaching in and grabbing a lot of them to eat, pouring the sauce, setting down the tea. And when we showed it projected onto another person's work. We showed it on the back of a tent, and we also had, I think it's Foley, we had sound effects of like people talking in the background. So it really felt more of this memory that I feel like a lot of Inuit share. Like when you go to someone's house or a relative you haven't seen in a while, we all crack out the the country food. Things like that are just so important to me. So yeah, that one was the first one. And the second one is large whale hunt. I think everyone is here. That's the second animation that I did, also based off of a painting. And that painting, I did it in 2019, and it was this 7 by 5 foot painting that took me forever. And I was really struggling with that one because I didn't know how to exactly depict it. It's from a memory from when I was 4 in growing up. It was in Igloolik. I was 4 and my family went to the beach, and we saw the community pulling the whale out of the water, and we saw bulldozers and pickup trucks, or I can't even remember, but it felt like everyone was there to help pull this whale out of the water and cut it up, and people were on top of it helping cut it up and distributing it. And so the physical painting, I felt like it took a lot of time to figure out how to exactly represent it, because in my mind the whale was huge. Like I was 4, so the whale felt like a building. But looking back on it, because it's such a distant memory, I feel like I was romanticizing it, like just the grandiose huge whale and all these people like pulling on the rope. So in the physical painting, I had like people in the foreground, and then way in the background you could see the whale. But I don't think it, in my head, didn't fully show the community effort. Like the people standing in the background, like see that there's 2 mothers, oh they just went away, but 2 mothers standing there watching, kids playing, running around, just people walking up to it, and not just the people pulling the whale. Everything, I felt like it had to be connected. So I made it into this animation, which I did in my house in Halifax for a show at Mount St. Vincent University. And I think it finally solidified what I wanted out of the big painting. Yeah, so working with animation has been a lot better for me, because what I'm doing for most of my paintings is trying to have like a memory that I could barely remember, and having it as like a catalog thing so that it doesn't like change, because as I age, memories change and they form differently, right? So I think reworking these memories into animations is also changing them in a way. Like when I think back to them, I also think back to these paintings. But I think it's fun. I like them. They're hard though. The one I did with the whale, I had to, so the first one, I had a lot of equipment that I got from the people from my artist residency, Concordia. And the second one, I just had 2 desk lamps. So I'll have to figure out how to get all the gear now for the next one. Yeah, where do I go from there?
We can continue having more of a conversation once Lindsay's
Yeah,
presented, if you'd like.
that's a good idea. Have more to remember to think about.
Thank you. I love those animations. They're incredible, especially having seen the paintings before. It's really cool to see them sort of come alive like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, if you wanted to present your video, feel free to screen share and go ahead, please. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Megan. So yeah, I normally live on unceded Coast Salish territories, the land of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh, but I'm just here visiting Treaty 6 territory where I grew up. So I just wanted to mention that. And I'm going to screen share. I know everybody here has probably seen this video, but maybe the people watching online have not. So let me just locate it. So the film that I made for INUA, which was actually sort of commissioned for the show, created specifically for the show earlier in 2020, it's called Inuk. We Are All Different, and it's about a 17-minute film, and I'm not going to show the whole thing here. But it's also an animation, and it involves 3 or 4 different kinds of animation in one. I'm just going to show maybe 2 different clips of it, so that you get a sense of what it looks like. You guys can see this video, right? Yeah, it's visible.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
That's what matters.
I know even people here that have grown up in Ukvit their whole lives, they even have self-esteem issues because they're thinking the same things that I'm thinking. Like they're not good enough, or they're not a good enough hunter. So yeah, everybody kind of goes through their own struggles, right? A lot of it because of colonization and how Inuit were kind of being told for so long that they were nothing. And trying to erase our culture and our language.
I think being Inuk doesn't exist on a spectrum. You are Inuk or you are not Inuk. Regardless of where you live, where you grew up, or what you've experienced. And I think if you are Inuk, you always have a place in any community that welcomes Inuit. I think what is different is your experience with cultural activities or your experience growing up as Inuk maybe exists on a spectrum.
A friend of mine who's also half Inuk was going.
Okay, so I'll show that bit, and then there was another piece that I was going to show, but I just have to find it. Guess I'll do this bit here.
World and down south world. I mean, obviously so many Inuit want to be an Inuit, and I wish I could too. But I think the point is that from what I see with governments is that you're limited unless you are living in Nunavut. And then it's like, well then, what does it really mean to be Inuk? We're supposed to just stay up north. I feel like that's also a form of oppression.
I think the idea that in order to be Inuk and receive the benefits that Inuit receive, that you have to live in an Inuit community on Inuit Nunangat is very dangerous. In a sense, you can say it feels like forced relocation. If you want to benefit from being an Inuk, you've got to move up north. You've got to live up there. And I think that's very inappropriate because there are definitely very specific challenges that Inuit Nunangat face, specifically overcrowding, high cost of living, things like that. And they might face other challenges at a more intense level. I'm not saying that that's not true, but Inuit who are born and raised in southern communities, we don't know why they are where they are, but they still are Inuk and they still have the same history and whatever challenges come with that history. And they still live their reality as Inuk, whatever challenges come with that reality. But I don't think decisions about identification can be made based on location. And I think we know more than anyone the dangers of making policy decisions based on location.
Okay, so I'll just, that's probably good just to get a sense of the kind of film that it is. It was a film that was made entirely over the pandemic. So there were a lot of things that colored and changed the way that this film, the way that it came to be and what it ended up becoming. I worked with the Inuit Futures project with Heather Luluarti to mentor two Inuk artists over the process of this animation, experimental animation, I call it. And I also had some support from the Shimka Center at the university that I work at to mentor a couple of other Emily Carr students through the course of the animation. And so mentorship is a really important part of the way that I make films now. It wasn't in the beginning. I started off making films, and I still do sometimes make films that are, entirely by me. I make the film stock myself. I do literally everything. I'm writing and editing and directing and processing and making the sound and literally everything. But I'm interested in opening up my practice to, hold open the door to other artists that are interested in doing some of the same things, especially Inuit artists or Indigenous artists that are interested in the same kinds of things, because I think that it's important to learn different ways of telling stories and different ways of approaching making of things. And it's something that I've done continuously, is not approach things in the way that is traditionally thought of in the film world anyway. So the film is made with it's shot on Super 16, and it involves stop motion animation. So kind of similar to what Megan was doing in that I have an object, I take a picture, I move the object a little bit, take another picture, and sorry, my cat just fell off the table. She's okay. I was using a software called Dragon Frame, and it's really useful. I'll show you how it works also with some process videos in a second here, because it shows you, it's called onion skinning. So it shows you a layer of what your image looked like the last time you took a picture. So you can move, in an image where you might have one object moving. It's not too hard to figure out which direction it was moving or how fast it was moving. But when you have 7 things moving in an image, it becomes a little bit more difficult to just mentally remember which direction they were going and which way they need to go and how fast they were moving. So, so Dragon Frame is a really useful piece of software And most of my films are analog films. This film, in some ways, is no exception. It began on 16mm film on color reversal Super 16, and I did hand process it, and then I had the footage scanned. So now I have a digital copy of the film. I edited the footage down so that I knew which parts of it I wanted to reanimate, and then I created cells. So I printed out individual images of the cells of the animation. So a cell is just a picture. And I printed them onto transparencies primarily. And those transparencies then I hand scratched. So you can see the scratches in there. And the scratching was also a really collaborative part of things. I had lots of different people work on different parts of it. My daughter scratched some of the cells, which I love. And then those were rephotographed under camera. So there's camera above and a light table below, and I was taking pictures of those, manipulating them as I was moving them. Maybe I'll show you what that stuff looks like, so you can kind of get a sense of just what I was doing. So yeah, maybe I'll play this one first. This is sort of like the process. So this is a video camera that was attached to the film camera, just so that I had a record and I could use the dragon frame. So this is me sitting in the bottom corner here on a little kiddie pool that I stuffed into my tiny studio and filled with water, spray painted and filled with water. And the ice is built out of all kinds of different things. And so this is an example of the stop motion animation. You can see my hand is in the water because I was trying to make the water move and be in a different position for every single image that I was taking. So in this, I'm animating the small piece of ice, the big piece of ice, and the bear and the water as I'm going. And I can always do like a replay of what I'm doing via this view that you're seeing here. So there's another one, obviously my hand is not in the animation that you see, but that's the in-betweens of shots when I was shooting them. You get a little bit of a sense of the workings of things. I built the environment out of rocks and bones and stones and antlers and all kinds of things, some that were taken from my family's traditional territory, Kyak-Monteith, and some that were taken just from Vancouver, where I was living when I made this. So this is some of the cell animation, layering two images over top of one another, sort of registering them. They're all numbered and labeled so you can tell which one goes after which one. And this is the scratching. So when we were, anybody that was going to do any of these cells, they would get kind of a set of cells, so one image, and that image might only be a 7-second shot, or it might be a 30-second shot, and it involves hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cells. And it's very, very, very satisfying to scratch this stuff off of here. I really wanted to use real photos. These are like transparencies, digitally printed transparencies, which gave the film a particular look and helped with that sort of transitioning between analog and digital, which I did several times over the course of this project. But it was much, much, much too expensive. Each one of these cells was over $1 to print. And if I wanted to do it on emulsion-based photos, which is much more satisfying to scratch, they were going to be almost $4 each. So I really just couldn't afford it. This is another piece of animation that's in the film. So I was using oil pastels. I guess Megan was probably doing some of that too in some of the work. So it's like different kind of oil pastels, and then take a picture, move the stuff around again, take a picture, and you'll see the dragon frame running at the end of this shot, I think. Me and my mask. And that's the dragon frame controller in the middle there, and you can see some of the stacks of photos I was using. Then I think that's the only pieces I really need to show you out of these process videos. That's the dragon frame software. So it was a very long process to create this, especially when we coupled in the mentorships as well. The audio was all created on Zoom. So in conversations like this, we had, I was working with an artist, Jennifer Hopinot-May, who's from Montreal, and she was helping with some of the translations and some of the interviews with the Inuit who are speaking in the film. So you can hear different people kind of talking about their experiences about connection to community and sometimes feeling disconnected from community when they live or grew up in a Southern community. And that was something that I was interested in exploring in terms of like the content of the film. The original impetus was to think about the idea of like dompanane, or like the idea of being like open and welcoming and belonging, really, which is something that my grandmother taught me. And we do talk about that, but because we were working with interviews and interviewees, the conversation went all kinds of places. And I think I had about 6 or 7 hours of footage in the end. So this animation that was supposed to be like a 6-minute film, and when you make an animation, you kind of want to plan out what you're doing because it takes so long to do everything. It ended up being almost 17 minutes. And so there's a lot of repetition of imagery, which is kind of a common occurrence in the work that I make. I'm often like recycling footage from other projects. It almost becomes like its own archive, but in this film, not quite the same thing. There's repetition of footage, and yeah, so the film was more than twice as long as I expected it to be. And so the editing process was quite a tricky one. I'll just show a little bit about the making of it. If I can find the document. This is Keola. So these are some of the things that we picked up. I think we went to like Stanley Park, and we got some moss and greenery and things to try and build the environment. We also used just this really old plexiglass that I found outside my studio. So some of that was ice. And then the entire underneath of the environment was built out of, 2x4s, rocks, foam, film cans, just whatever I could find to build up the structure underneath. So there's, my studio is very small. It's like 8 or 9 feet long and 6 or 7 feet wide. So you can see I'm kind of on a pallet here, and I've set up, there's a rails system for the camera, or sometimes just on a tripod. Yeah, so we would just sort of build it and mask the background to make it look a little bit more realistic. And there's some of the stills. There's the pool of water in my studio, and some of the setup with all the electronics next to the kiddie pool. And then some of the results from the film. And then let's see, here's the scratching stuff. These are some real photo cells, some cells on paper. This yellow one in the back was on emulsion. This one here is on real emulsion. I really enjoyed scratching that, but I couldn't afford it. And then these are the transparencies that I was using. And so there's a lot of examples of what that looks like, but I would generally lay out 3 to 6 of the cells at a time and kind of plan out where things were going, and spent many, many hours scratching the cells and animating those. So I'm pretty pleased with the animation part of things, with the scratching of the animations. Kind of wish I'd had time to do more of it. Like my vision for the film originally was that it was entirely going to be scratched cells, which didn't work out. Here's Oyarak and Jennifer and I in one of our conversations to record the audio, because everything happened on Zoom. So both Jennifer and I were recording from our locations, and some images of the editing. So I was also using, the bears are from the 1940s. They're these antique wind-up bears. They're made in Japan. And then I fell in love with the one bear that kind of had no skin, had no hair. As kind of like the odd man out. And I was also using some maps that were from about the 1880, I think, is some maps of the area that my family's from in Nunavut, so near Kyak-Monteith, and some of them were really interesting versions of what the map makers thought the world looked like, and some of them were obviously taken from some knowledge that they had received from Inuit in the area about, where things were and how things worked. And then one of them was like a map for like portaging, like for canoeing, to canoe up the 2 rivers that sort of meet in Kyak-Monteith. And then here you can kind of see the design of the space. So it's also an installation in Inua at Qaumajuq. There's this installation space, and the video plays on this little monitor here with subtitles in Inuktitut. And you can see some photos on the wall. There's kind of a wider view of the space here. The sound for the film plays out of speaker and out of the lamp next to the chair over here. And it's it was a very interesting process putting that together, because super collaborative with the curators, Anatsiak and Heather in particular. Like Heather, I don't think the rug is in these pictures, but Heather actually like made a rug because I wanted a rug, like a particular kind of rug for it. So I was sort of production designing it from Vancouver, and then coming back to them with like, hey, can you find something that sort of looks like this? Because it's a little bit of a reproduction of my my grandmother's living room, and the way that I sort of remember being welcomed into her home and into her space. So it's got you know, characteristics that maybe are familiar to Inuit everywhere, but like the idea of like coming into a home in the north and like sitting at the table having tea and looking out the window and being able to see the land out front. We originally thought to maybe be able to see Zach's hunting cabin outside the window. So that was part of the design of it, and I still haven't seen it in person because I'm here and it is there, but I'm hoping to come because the show's on. It's been extended till March sometimes, so really hoping to make a trip out to Winnipeg to see it in person. So I think that's all I have to say about process and, you know, how the film was made.
Thank you.
Great.
Mm-hmm. It was fantastic to be able to see all of that behind the scenes work too. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
We do have about 15 minutes, and I have some questions that I came up with before the call, but maybe if you wanted to have a sort of discussion more openly between the two of you about how you sort of reacted to each other's work, and where you see interconnections. If you do, I could also, you know, open up my questions, and if Kristen has questions too, we can do that.
I was really felt connected to the conversations in your animation. I really like felt that, like I agree with a lot of the feelings toward not feeling Inuk enough, and that is so good. Oh, and it was really interesting. The maps that you have, those are so precious. The maps in the background of the painting. Ooh, so good. Sorry, I'm just like complimenting.
I think the maps and like, I mean, I'm sort of like a junkie for collecting old things too, and just like, but I always sort of save things for, you know, a moment where I'm hoping to be able to use this for something, or hoping to be able to save this for another project. And the bears and the maps were things that I was like literally holding on to for a long time, because I sort of always saw this animation, and then the pandemic was kind of a time to sort of finally be able to do that. Yeah, it was an intense process, but I'm really proud of it. I made the film for Inuit, and you know, from everywhere. It's part of why it's subtitled in Inuktitut as well, and even in the sort of Roman orthography of Inuktitut, because I'm learning. I'm not a speaker, but I'm learning, and so that was important to me to make it ideally as accessible as possible to people who might be viewing it in some form or another. So there's the installation view, but I also, you know, would like to be able to screen the film different places, festivals and things like that. when that part of the world opens up again. So I think the first thing that I thought when I saw your piece was that I want to do a collaboration with you. That was like the very first thing that I thought. But and I am still kind of astounded that I was just listening or reading like a description of what you did for the cardboard piece. I was like, I could have sworn that was 100%, every bit of it, a real piece of cardboard underneath everything. And it was so cool because it was like, that's how you would be cutting up meat and preparing meat. You would have like cardboard box and cut it open. And so it was just really interesting to hear about that and all the different layers in it. I love how the film functions a little bit like memory, like how things kind of appear, the way that you just like almost in a dream, you're like, these things were there, but then they just wipe away and they disappear really quickly. Like it's not there's no need to progress everything from this happens and then this happens and then this happens. There's kind of like, I remember this piece and then I remember this piece and then I remember this piece. And so it feels really real, like a very real experience of experiencing something like that. And I thought you did that really well. It's really hard to do in animation, like to know when to stop taking so many damn pictures and then, when you do need to build up and make something take longer. So the pacing in it was really well done.
Thank you. After seeing your stuff, I really want to make like a set now. And like do little, that looks so fun.
Did you use dry flame too, or like some kind of like onion skinning thing when you were doing it? You must have.
No, I didn't. I think I might have for the first one. I can't quite remember, but the second one I didn't. So I think it was pretty difficult to figure out like if you were taking enough photos. So like sometimes you'd be like, oh, I painted a lot and I haven't taken a photo in a while. So yeah, that was pretty difficult, but yeah, definitely seeing like your setup with the like your little
dragon frame
board
thing?
yeah, and the laptop in front of you so you could see. So nice.
I had a quick question about your process, Megan. So you had said you did the paintings on top of plexiglass. Was that something you just came up with as a way to figure out how to do it in your painting medium that you're comfortable with, or is that an established animation style that you learned about?
I'm not sure if it is. I did it because I knew that I wanted to skew the oil in a way, and like because when I'm painting just like a regular painting, I'm mixing everything on a piece of glass with like a palette knife, and it's easy to like I'm familiar with how easy it is to scrape away and like carve out paint on a glass. So I figured out that would be an easy way to play with that idea and have it in animation. I would like to know if other people are doing it and if they have other ways to utilize the glass, because that was really fun.
Have you ever used multiple layers of plexi? Like one piece of the drawing, you can kind of tell in the whale piece, you have an underpainting essentially, or maybe it's pastel, but it is fixed. So then you're able to move the people and things around on that surface. But there's also like the kind of idea of having multiple layers of things that can move and disappear. I wondered if you had done that or thought.
Yeah. I was trying to get into painting cell painting. I was like testing it out because you'd have like multiple layers of things. Like I was trying to do one where with my house or my parents' house in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and with the brush and like the bushes and the trees, and have them like move separately so that they like you could get that depth. I definitely didn't use the right paint for the cells, but yeah, I guess that is kind of a form of layering the glass, just painting and letting it dry and moving those cells. That is an established form of animation. But the wet paint thing that I'm doing was pretty fun. I feel like it can only work with oil paint because it's like dries real slow. I tested it out with acrylic and it just cracks.
So for this animation, did you just wipe the plexiglass when you were done the specific image?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a palette knife and it's easy to just get it to like come off, but because it's plexiglass and not real glass, it sometimes the knife would dig into the plexiglass and it would create like a lot of scratches, and sometimes the paint would stay in there. In the second animation that I did, the whale hunt one, because I had 2 desk lamps in front of like my station, you could really see the drop shadow of all the paint on the under drawing.
I like that.
So yeah, at first I was like, oh my god, how do I fix this? Because I didn't have a polarizer things on the lights and the on the lens, so there was a lot of glare, so finicky fixing those. But the drop shadow was interesting, and maybe like layering different pieces of glass and creating like a depth, focusing on certain layers that are like have different height would be fun. Yeah.
I have a question sort of more towards the themes of your pieces. And writing about Inuit art so much, I often see sort of a connection to the land as a main focus of Inuit and Inuit identity. And since both of you are working as urban Inuit and your pieces sort of center around that, like how do you think like Inuit identity is formed when you're not connected to that land anymore or haven't been?
Yeah, it's kind of like a longing for going back. I haven't been back in a while, few years, and I feel like it's kind of trying to hold on to my own identity and like holding on to these memories and like forming them in like so many different ways over and over again. And the act of not having country food all the time, so I paint it and I'm trying to connect in that way. And currently I'm reforming that same painting into like a sculpture right now. So it's like I don't know, Inuit identity definitely plays a huge part in, I think, my selection of memories. I have other paintings that I do where like centered around me and my little brother, who grew up a lot of our lives in Nova Scotia, kind of thinking about what it means to be an Inuk who like feels Inuk in like a southern Nova Scotia setting, but when you go to Nunavut, you feel out of place because you haven't been there so long. And yeah, there's a few more animations that I want to do because I feel like more paintings that I would like to turn into animations really speak on that directly. I had a show in the Marion Scott Gallery a few months ago, and all the pieces centered around that and my little brother and my connection to my great-grandmother and relatives in general, and relatives that speak Inuktitut and only Inuktitut, and coming from someone who can't speak Inuktitut anymore and has lost it from living down south. It's like, oh, air conditioner just came on. Where was I? Oh yeah, and like finding different ways to connect with relatives without words, like sharing food and sharing country food, making bannock, just drinking tea, even if like without being able to speak the language. I've explored that in some of the paintings.
So many connections. I did a show also at the Marion Scott Gallery that was about finding ways to connect with relatives without using words, many of whom have passed, and I used Zoom for it. It was called Lindsey Mcintyre's Inviting You to a Scheduled Zoom Meeting, and so I had Zoom meetings with like photos and staged things with some of my relatives. I think that to your question, Napatsi, I think that's like exactly what my film is about. It traverses through I wouldn't say group of Inuit, but individuals speaking to that feeling or that sense of, you know, what it means to be Inuk when you don't live on that territory. And I think that clip that I showed at the beginning says a lot about that, because it's you know, the idea of connecting identity to place, and it's so fixed in maybe like the Canadian mindset or the way that people outside of community think about what it means to be Inuk or to be Inuit is it's very, very tied to place, and it's and it can be disorienting, and there can be quite a feeling of disconnection for people who, for one reason or another, don't live there or don't live there anymore, or who didn't grow up there. And it's I think a thing that needs to be talked about. I think it's a thing that we need to explore and come to terms with, both for, you know, Inuit in community and those who live outside of that, or who come from a mixed background, for example, which is in my case. So I think it's about trying to explore those things as authentically as I can. There's lots of things that I can't tell stories about, things that I didn't experience when I grew up. And all of my films are very, very personal. So they all come from a place of what this means to me, and what part of that can maybe resonate with other people, and in this case, hopefully other Inuit. But it's a tricky thing, but I want it to be talked about. I want it to be okay for people to be Inuk elsewhere. And there's this really great line Oyarak has at the end of the film where, what does she say exactly? Oh, I can't remember. But it's this really beautiful quote about how what it really means to be Inuit, and how special it would be if Inuit could just be everywhere, and that was like the great amazing thing about Inuit. Not that we need to be, you know, living in one particular place and be a certain way in the eyes of who exactly, of ourselves, of other people. So it's really something that I hope people get something out of it, and, you know, have a sense of, at least the way that the speakers that I was talking to are exploring some of those ideas. I think that there is a really strong connection to land. I think that's always been really important to Inuit identity, but that, you know, ties into other things. You know, Nooks is talking about, you know, feeling like he's not a good enough hunter, or, you know, he didn't learn those hunting skills when he was a little boy, even though he grew up in community, or because he left community early, and sort of like feeling guilty or feeling bad about those things. And whether or not you're sort of accepted as Inuk when you come back to a community, but I think it's just about authentically being who you are, who you need to be. And yeah, well, that's kind of what what I was looking at, but I do see a lot of connections thematically to the work that Megan is making, and it's really great to be part of this discussion and look at these two films together.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, you disappeared.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, my internet just restarted, I think. Oh, okay, I'm back.
Well, thank you so much for those answers. That was illuminating and lovely. We're coming up on 1 o'clock. So if anybody else has questions, maybe just we can quickly go through them now, or if either of you wanted to say anything else about your work before we close off, that would be great. Anybody? I don't see any in the chat.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you both for your work and for this conversation. It's been really exciting to hear more about your process, and yeah, just thanks so much for this event and for your incredible work. I hope to see it in person someday.
Me too.
To make it out to Winnipeg.
Thank you.
Jocelyn, did you want to say anything in closing remarks, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, Koyanamik, to all of you. We have a student summer camp kind of coming through here too. But yes, Koyanamik, for your wonderful talk, and Napatsi as well for moderating this. I know that, I thought you would be just a great person to chat with these two artists, and I just wanted to add too, just check out wag.ca/inua, for more information on the show itself, and also to check out the virtual tour that's on there, as well as the Inua audio guide that was also put together by a wonderful group of Inuit Futures students and participants. Yeah, look for more events also on the Inua website, and look forward to welcoming everybody, hopefully in the future. And also want to say, just last thing, thank you to RBC as well for sponsoring these events. Hope everybody takes care, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Nakumik, and I recommend the virtual tour. It's excellent.
Definitely.
Thank you, Lindsay and Megan, for sharing your work with us. It was beautiful.
It was really great to chat with you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Napatsi. Thanks, Jocelyn.